The Métis are a distinct Indigenous people. Métis communities in Ontario emerged along waterways and fur trade routes before Canada was a country. These historic Métis communities, which persist to the present day, developed their own customs, traditions, and identities that are rooted in kinship, relationship to the land, and a distinctive culture and way of life.
The Abitibi Inland Métis is very important. We're a historic community.
Every time I came back home, I had that feeling. When I went out in my traditional territory, I felt that I was at home.
Abitibi Inland is a community of interconnected Métis populations in northeastern Ontario. European contact began here following the 1668 establishment of the first fur trading post on James Bay by the English. This James Bay post led to the creation of the Hudson's Bay Company in 1670. Fur traders during this time developed relationships with First Nations women. Initially, children born from these relationships remained in the care of their mothers and were First Nations in terms of culture and social identity. In the late 1700s, increased competition between French and English fur traders led to the creation of many inland posts, which were networked together through trade and resource sharing. This network led to the creation of a regional fur trade community.
Back then, I don't think you had someone that says, okay, you're now a Métis. It was children that were from the fur trade, right? So the white traders, typically it was the white traders and the First Nation women, and those children marrying other children of the fur trade or other First Nations.
Unlike earlier children of mixed ancestry, by the start of the 19th century, many children of the fur trade were being raised within this fur trade community. Métis men filled occupations in the fur trade, such as interpreters, canoe builders, sailors, guides, carpenters, blacksmiths, and general laborers. Promotions for Métis men did not usually extend beyond postmaster or clerk. Métis men and women were both affected by a social class system. Kinagamissi Journal 1803 lists John Knight, a factory boy, as a new member of the post community. Kinagamissi Journal 1812 lists Harry Lawson, a factory lad, joins the post as a laborer. By the early 19th century, the presence of a unique Métis identity was being acknowledged by the European community. During this period, Hudson Bay Company journals began recording that children of a distinct ethnic and cultural background were employed in the Abitibi Inland region. These were the factory boys. The term was used by European post managers to differentiate between half-breed children of the fur trade and European-born servants and apprentices. The services of native youths are becoming every year more and more conspicuous. They are almost our sole dependents, both for supplying and supporting the inland stations. Members of this new half-breed fur trade community often lived apart from European workers at the posts. They opted to camp with nearby families instead. June 12, 1809. Sent those Knight and John Knight to build a lodge at the Fish Hall for the convenience of them during the time of tatameg spawning, at which time there is always someone staying there procuring and salting fish for winter use. December 20, 1825. Bisson recorded 4 hares from his snares. Polson came home from hunting hares. He brought 60 hares and left 40 at his tent. These skilled hunters also had the willingness and the ability to establish hunting camps with their Métis families away from posts where access to game may be more plentiful. March 31, 1848. Saunders' family returned yesterday from their snaring ground. Women fulfilled many roles. In fact, half-breed daughters made crucial contributions. They mended canoes and crafted snowshoes. They also engaged in hunting, trapping, fishing, and maple sugar production to support the fur trade. Emma Turner's contributions were recorded frequently at the Mattawagaming. July 18, 1817. Cloudy, Mrs. Turner came home from the lower part of the lake where she was fishing for some time. William Polson's wife, likely Flora Levesque de Otinimakwe, was also known to be a skilled hunter. August 1823. Polson's woman killed 7 muskrats, 3 ducks, and 1 pigeon. She is an excellent hand at dressing beaver skins. The second half of the 19th century brought new challenges to the existing Abitibi inland Métis community. During this period, traditional occupations were challenged as access to furs decreased and the fur trade entered decline. Road and steam access to Lake Temiskaming also brought the threat of European settlement and the potential loss of land. However, the Abitibi inland Métis continued to live together and maintain kinship bonds. Evidence of this can be seen on the 1901 census. This single census indicated the presence of more than 200 Abitibi inland Métis clustered at Flying Post, Mattagami, and North Temiskaming. Census records document that Métis formed 85% of the population at Moose Factory circa 1901, many of whom lived on the post grounds. Descendants of these families continue to live in the Abitibi inland Métis community.
The end of the 19th century is when the lumber industry started moving into the area. You see the movement of the Métis from the fur trade into lumbering at about that time. So they started moving in at that time. But I mean, effective control wasn't established in this area till about 1905 when they signed the treaty. So the treaty, if you look at it, the treaty for Treaty 9 in this area was signed between 1905 and 1906.
The government finally sent a treaty commission in 1905 when it became clear that a formal agreement would be required to open the region for new rail lines, resource extraction, and large-scale settlement. But the Métis were excluded from Treaty 9.
Some of them, they were told if they wanted to be part of the treaty, they'd have to take on being First Nations. So they'd have to lose their Métis status and become First Nation people. Some did, some didn't.
In 1905, a petition for scrip, signed by 5 well-known heads of families at Moose Factory, was made to government. The petition notes that no provision is at present made for us, because they had been refused entry into Treaty 9 by the commissioners on the grounds that these families were not living the Indian mode of life. The petition also notes that the group understands scrip has been granted to the half-breeds of the Northwest Territory. This petition is an example of a collective self-identification. The Treaty Commission was not given the power to recognize or negotiate with the Métis community in Abitibi. As a result, the Métis community was left without the benefits or protections that treaty extended. European settlements soon followed, and many Métis people went into hiding to protect their families from racism and from having to go to residential schools, to protect their land, homes, or farms from being taken away from them for the use of Euro-Canadians, and to protect their livelihood. They often did not even tell their children or grandchildren they were Métis.
And you still had your culture, but it basically, as a Métis community, it disappeared underground. It still stayed a community.
During this time of oppression, many Métis families continued to practice their distinct culture and way of life.
I learned a lot from my grandmother, my father's mother. I was fortunate enough to take care of her when she was sick. Family is important because that's how you keep your traditions alive, and that's how you keep you make your plans to who's going moose hunting, who's going to do the moose this year, and where are you going, where are the moose, where aren't there enough moose. So everybody gets together and has that discussion.
We hunt and we trap up like beavers and all that. Yeah, that's what we do mostly.
We normally go hunting, trapping, go to relax at the camp, and stuff like that.
I took my trapper's course last year, and I'm going to take my safety course sometime this year, maybe next year. So yeah, I'm learning slowly.
it was always there. You know, the hunting, the fishing, the wanting to be in the bush all the time, the picking of the berries, going with grandma to pick up her medicines. So it was always there. It was a hidden part of being there. My children are not ashamed or not. It's not a hidden fact that they are Métis. Métis are accepted as one of the 3 Indigenous people of Canada, and I think it's people look at it now from a different lens. They look at it as what you can add to the whole, not, oh yeah, here's another breed, I guess they used to call us. So yeah, so the experience is different.
When I hear stories, like, I feel like that people have come a long way to recognize the Métis. So it's really less of like a struggle for like hiding your identity.
I am proud to be Métis.
Yes, I am proud.
I am very proud to be Métis.
I am super proud to be Métis. I've always been proud.